Have you ever wondered what happens when someone who always puts others first, always listens, always forgives, always tries to understand, finally stands up and says, "I won't accept this for one more minute," not with screaming or rage, but with a quiet resolve, a deep inner strength that forces the narcissist, who always saw themselves as untouchable, to finally face the truth they've avoided their entire life. That's the moment we're going to explore today, when a super empath, a person with extraordinary emotional sensitivity, chooses to fight back and shakes the very foundation of the narcissist's false world. This isn't just a minor shift, it's a spiritual rebellion, a direct hit that leaves the narcissist with nowhere to hide. Picture this. A situation many of us have lived through. You're with someone who constantly demands attention, who needs you to validate their worth, yet never cares about how you feel. You stay patient, you're kind, you hope your support will help them grow. But then one day it hits you. They're not changing, they're just using you. So what happens when you stop giving, when you stop feeding into their endless, unreasonable demands? That's the one thing a narcissist can't handle. And that's the power a super empath holds. This video will walk you through that journey, step by step, from quiet endurance to intentional anger to a powerful rebirth. If you've ever felt trapped in a relationship with a narcissist, whether it's a partner, a friend, a family member, or even a colleague, then this is the moment you need to tune in. And if you suspect you might be a super empath, someone who's given too much for too long but is now ready to take your power back, this video could be your guiding light. So go ahead and hit that like button to support this journey. Share it with anyone who needs a spark of hope, and let's dive deep into this topic together. We'll break down every stage, every choice, every consequence. And I promise you this, by the time this video ends, you'll understand exactly why a super empath's power is something a narcissist can't handle. But before we begin, take a second to reflect on this. Have you ever felt stuck in a cycle where you gave and got nothing in return? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'll circle back to them later. Now, let's step into the first chapter of this story. To truly understand why the moment a super empath pushes back has the power to change everything, we need to start by clearly seeing the two central characters in this silent war. Let's break each of them down one by one, because only when we understand who they are can we grasp why this confrontation is so important. First, a super empath is not just your average sensitive person. They're an upgraded version, someone with a rare gift. They don't just feel other people's emotions, they analyze them, they see through them. They can detect the pain you try to hide, sense the insecurity behind your bragging, and spot lies no matter how well disguised. This isn't just empathy, it's intuition sharpened over time. It's emotional intelligence on another level, allowing them to navigate complex emotional landscapes others might miss. But what truly sets the super empath apart is their patience and compassion. They don't rush to judgment. They don't easily give up on people, even those who mistreat them. They tend to stay, to observe, to try and understand the why behind someone's behavior. That makes them incredible friends, deeply trusted listeners, but also, tragically, easy targets if they don't set firm boundaries. And that is exactly what puts them in the narcissist's line of sight. So who is the narcissist? Let's move to the second key player in this story. Narcissists don't thrive on connection or authenticity. They thrive on control and validation. They crave constant attention, endless praise, and they'll do anything to get it. Emotional manipulation, exaggerating their achievements, blaming others when things go wrong. To them, the world is a stage, and they're the only star. Everyone else exists to applaud them or play a supporting role in their performance. When a narcissist meets a super empath, they don't see a human being with feelings, needs, and intrinsic value. They see an opportunity, a perfect source of narcissistic supply. Think about it. Narcissists rely on others to maintain their sense of self-worth. Psychologists call this the narcissistic supply. They need praise, attention, obedience. Without it, they feel empty. Their ego isn't built from within, it's patched together from what they can extract from the outside world. And the super empath, with their natural compassion and emotional endurance, becomes an ideal target. Let's pause here to examine how these two people interact, because this is where the silent war begins. The super empath often enters the relationship with the best of intentions. They want to help, they want to understand, and they're willing to overlook toxic behaviors because they believe the narcissist can change. They see the cracks in the narcissist's mask, the fear of rejection, the deep-rooted insecurity, and they hope their support will help them heal. They give time, energy, empathy, and sometimes even their own self-worth. But the narcissist doesn't see this kindness as a gift. They see it as a right, as if the super empath owes them this loyalty and care without question. They don't thank the super empath for their compassion. They expect it, demand it, and grow angry when it's not delivered exactly how and when they want it. In the narcissist's mind, the super empath isn't an equal. They're a tool, a resource to exploit whenever they need. To understand why this dynamic plays out, let's look through the lens of evolutionary psychology. Researchers believe that highly sensitive individuals, like super empaths, evolved as survival mechanisms to protect their communities. They were the peacemakers, the healers, the ones willing to sacrifice for harmony. But when they're pushed too far, when their kindness is used rather than cherished, those same survival instincts kick in. This isn't weakness, it's power forged through centuries of emotional resilience. And it's a power the narcissist never sees coming because they're too busy using that kindness to serve themselves. So why is a super empath the narcissist's greatest threat? Because the super empath doesn't just endure, they observe. They don't just listen, they analyze. Every time the narcissist crosses a line, every lie, every manipulation, the super empath doesn't just feel it, they remember it. They build a clear internal map of the narcissist's behavior, a map the narcissists themselves may never be aware of. They notice the patterns, the way the narcissist rewrites history to avoid blame, the way they twist truth to gain attention, the way they deflect responsibility onto others. Super empaths have a more active amygdala, the part of the brain that processes emotions, which allows them to sense dishonesty and manipulation faster than most. While the narcissist believes they're in control, the super empath has already picked up on the inconsistencies in their words, tone, and actions. This is the hidden war the narcissist doesn't even realize they're in, because they're too confident in their ability to manipulate to recognize that their opponent is preparing for a quiet revolution. And here's the most important truth. Narcissists mistake the super empath's patience for weakness. They assume the super empath will always stay, always give, always forgive. What they don't realize is that patience is a choice, and every choice has a limit. Once that line is crossed, the super empath stops being a source of narcissistic supply and becomes a game changer. This is the beginning of the narcissist's unraveling, and we'll explore that turning point in the next section. But before we get there, take a moment to reflect. Have you ever had someone mistake your kindness for weakness? How did you handle it? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your story. It might just help someone else recognize the same pattern in their own life. Now that we clearly understand the two main characters and how they interact, let's dive deeper into one of the most defining traits of the super empath: patience. But this isn't the ordinary kind of patience you see in someone waiting calmly in traffic or standing in line. This is a profound, almost superhuman level of patience. The ability to endure things that most people would walk away from right at the start. A super empath doesn't leave after the first wound. They don't turn their back after one lie or one act of manipulation. They stay, not because they're weak, but because they carry a deep belief that their goodness can create change. When the narcissist says hurtful things, the super empath may think, they're just dealing with their own insecurities. When the narcissist breaks a promise, the super empath might believe they just need more time to grow. One day they'll value honesty. When the narcissist shifts the blame for problems they didn't cause, the super empath convinces themselves, maybe I can help them see the truth through understanding and support. This is a noble quality. the ability to see potential in someone even when that person doesn't deserve it. But like all strengths, this deep patience can also become a weakness if not kept in balance. Super empaths often put others' needs ahead of their own, sometimes to the point of forgetting they deserve respect too. They can endure manipulation, dishonesty, and even emotional abuse for a long time, not because they don't see it, but because they hope their sacrifice will lead to something better. They believe that if they're just patient enough, kind enough, understanding enough, then the narcissist will change. And the narcissist sees this, not with gratitude, but with calculation. They realize the super empath's patience is a resource they can exploit. They assume the super empath will always be there, always forgiving, always providing the attention and emotional support they need to feel important. In the narcissist's mind, the super empath's kindness isn't a gift, it's an entitlement, something they can demand whenever they want without offering anything in return. They don't see the super empath as a human being with their own feelings and limits. They see them as a never-ending supply, a tool they can use whenever they please. Imagine a relationship where one person constantly demands attention, makes promises they never keep, and shifts blame every time things go wrong. The other person, the super empath, doesn't react by arguing or leaving. Instead, they stay, they listen, they try to understand. They excuse the hurtful words, forgive the lies, absorb the blame, all because they believe their patience will eventually help the other person become better. But what happens when that change never comes? What happens when that limit is finally reached? This is where we turn to the concept of emotional resilience. Psychologists say that people like super empaths don't break under pressure, they accumulate it. Every time they're hurt, every time they use, they don't just endure it, they log it. Not out of bitterness or a desire for revenge, but to build a clear picture of reality, a picture they'll use when the time is right. This isn't passivity, it's preparation. It's a process the narcissist never sees coming because they're too focused on draining the super empath's kindness to notice the awakening that's happening beneath the surface. Highly sensitive people like super empaths don't just feel pain more deeply, they're also attuned to the smallest signals of dishonesty or manipulation. When a narcissist says something that doesn't match their actions, the super empath picks up on it. When the narcissist rewrites the narrative to escape accountability, the super empath sees it clearly. They don't just feel, they analyze, they learn, and eventually they start asking the hard questions. Why am I still allowing this to happen? And this is the part narcissists will never understand. The super empath's patience is not unlimited. It is not submission. It is not weakness. It is a choice. And every choice has its limit. Think of it like a glass of water. Every time the narcissist crosses a boundary, one more drop is added. The super empath might be able to hold hundreds, even thousands of drops, but eventually there will be one drop that causes the entire glass to overflow. It won't be an explosive outburst, it will be the result of accumulation, of awareness, of finally realizing they can't keep sacrificing themselves forever. So what happens when that threshold is crossed? The super empath doesn't need to scream or create drama to prove they've had enough. They simply change how they respond. They stop blindly forgiving. They stop supplying the attention the narcissist relies on. They begin to set boundaries. Not with loud arguments or theatrical exits, but with quiet strength, with meaningful silence. And that's when the narcissist finally starts to realize they've underestimated their opponent, a mistake they're about to pay for dearly. When a super empath reaches their limit, what happens next is a complete turning point, a moment that catches the narcissist completely off guard and shakes the very foundation of the world they've built. That's when they get angry, but let's be clear from the start, this isn't the kind of anger you typically see from a narcissist. Explosive, selfish, and chaotic. The anger of a super empath is something entirely different. It's slow, intentional, and rooted in one core principle, justice. They don't get angry to seek revenge or to hurt others. They get angry to protect themselves and to restore the balance that has been shattered by the narcissist's abuse. Let's compare these two types of anger to see the contrast clearly, because this contrast is the key to understanding why the super empath's anger is so powerful. When a narcissist gets angry, it's a tool, a means to avoid accountability and maintain control. They yell to silence others. They blame to shift attention away from their own mistakes. They manipulate emotions to make people feel guilty or afraid. Their anger is a performance designed to protect their fragile ego and ensure they never have to face the consequences of their action. But the anger of a super empath? It's the exact opposite. It doesn't need to be loud or dramatic to be powerful. It doesn't erupt in shouting matches or aggressive acts. Instead, it shows up through clear decisions and firm actions. The super empath doesn't argue to prove they're right. They step away from pointless debates. They don't respond to manipulation with more emotion. They stop giving the attention the narcissist craves. They don't explain why they're setting boundaries, they just set them and hold them. This is rational, ethical anger, and it cannot be shaken. Narcissists operate in a reward cycle. They manipulate to get attention, approval, or obedience. It's how they maintain their sense of identity. Without that reward, they feel lost. For a long time, the super empath unintentionally participated in this cycle by giving the narcissist what they wanted, not out of weakness, but in the hope that it would inspire change. But when the super empath gets angry, they break that cycle completely. They stop giving, they stop responding the way the narcissist expects. And this causes a full-blown identity crisis for the narcissist, because they don't know who they are without the reflection of the super empath. The super empath's anger isn't impulsive or reckless. It's the product of months, maybe even years, of accumulating pain and insight. They've seen the patterns, the manipulation, the story twisting, the blame shifting. They've recognized the lies, the exploitation, and now they've made a decision. They deserve better. Their anger isn't an explosion, it's an awakening. And this is what makes the super empath's anger so uniquely powerful. It's not meant to destroy the narcissist. It's meant to protect themselves. They don't need to tear others down to feel strong. They don't need to inflict pain to prove their worth. They only need to say no, and that no carries more force than any outburst. Think about it. When the narcissist no longer receives the attention they feed off of, they begin to panic. They can't manipulate someone who's no longer playing. They can't control someone who's no longer afraid of the fallout. The absence of the super empath becomes their strongest weapon, a weapon the narcissist never saw coming because they were too arrogant in their sense of control. The super empath's anger is not just a reaction, it's a declaration. It's how they tell the narcissists and themselves that they will no longer be treated like a tool, that they will no longer be used, that they will no longer sacrifice their self-worth to please someone else. This is a powerful shift, not just in how they interact with the narcissist, but in how they view themselves. They realize their own value. They realize they have the right to set boundaries. They realize they don't have to suffer forever, and the narcissist never sees it coming until it's too late. They thought they could keep crossing lines without consequence. They thought the super empath would always be there, always forgiving, always giving. But when the super empath gets angry, they don't just pull away, they transform. They're no longer the narcissist's emotional supply. They become a mirror, one that reflects a truth the narcissist has avoided their whole life, that their behavior is unacceptable, that they can't control everything forever. When the super empath says no, they're not just rejecting the narcissist, they're rejecting the entire system the narcissist created to manipulate them. They're rejecting the role the narcissist assigned them, the role of the ever-giving, never-receiving caregiver. And that doesn't just make the narcissist panic, it leaves them completely unmoored. They don't know how to handle a super empath who no longer plays by their rules. Have you ever used silence as a way to protect yourself? Have you ever realized that walking away can be more powerful than fighting back? That's the kind of strength we're talking about here, a strength that doesn't need to be loud to leave an impact. Share your story in the comments. I want to know how you found your power through quiet strength and unwavering resolve. When the super empath decides to push back, what happens to the narcissist is a chain reaction they never saw coming and could never prepare for. They don't just lose a person in their life, they lose a vital piece of the identity they've carefully constructed for years. Let's break down each stage of this unraveling, because this is when we clearly see the true fragility of the narcissist, a fragility they've long hidden behind a mask of false confidence. The narcissist's first reaction when the super empath pulls away is shock, a deep, jarring, unexpected blow. They can't believe this is happening. They've grown used to being in control of the relationship, used to the super empath always being there to meet their needs, whether it's attention, validation, or emotional support. In their mind, the super empath is an inseparable part of the system they've built to maintain their ego. When the super empath says no and walks away, the narcissist feels as if the ground beneath them has been ripped out. They ask themselves, how dare they do this to me? Who do they think they are to reject me? This is the first crack in their ego, and it shakes every belief they've held about themselves. The narcissist isn't just shocked that they've lost the super empath. They're shocked because they never thought it was possible. They built a world in which they were the center, where others existed to serve their needs. And the super empath, with their patience and compassion, unknowingly reinforced that illusion for a long time. So when the super empath walks away, the narcissist doesn't just lose a person, they lose a part of the narrative they've been telling themselves about how important, how untouchable they are, and that's a blow they have no tools to handle. After the initial shock, the narcissist moves into a more familiar response, anger. They don't take this loss quietly, they attempt to regain control by any means necessary. They might threaten the super empath with statements like, "You'll regret this. No one else would ever put up with you the way I did." They may blame the super empath for everything that went wrong in the relationship, trying to make them feel guilty. Or they may say things like, "You're so selfish for leaving me. You clearly never cared about me." These are desperate attempts to pull the super empath back into their old role, the giver, the fixer, the emotional supplier. But here's the key. When the super empath has chosen to stand up, those tactics no longer work. They don't respond with arguments or explanations. They stand firm. They don't engage in the drama the narcissist tries to spark. They don't react to manipulation with anger or fear. They simply stop playing the game. And that's what sends the narcissist into even deeper panic. They begin to realize that the tools they once used to control the super empath, threats, blame, emotional guilt, no longer have any effect. This is when the narcissist starts to feel truly lost. When anger fails, the narcissist often resorts to another familiar weapon, playing the victim. They might start telling sad stories about how hurt they are, how cruel the super empath has been for abandoning them. They may say things like, "I can't live without you, you've ruined my life." They'll try to provoke pity, recount past hardships, and talk about how much they've supposedly sacrificed. All of it is designed to make the super empath feel responsible for their emotional well-being. But make no mistake, this isn't sincerity. It's a last-ditch effort to manipulate and draw the super empath back into the cycle they've broken free from. A narcissist is like a machine that runs on external fuel, and the super empath was once their main power source, not because the empath was weak, but because they were once willing to give. But when that power supply is cut off, the machine grinds to a halt. The narcissist doesn't know how to generate internal validation. They've never learned how to sit with themselves, because their entire identity is built through the reflection of others. Social science tells us that narcissists often lack true self-awareness. They depend on external reinforcement to maintain their sense of self-worth. When the super empath walks away, there's nothing left for them to grasp onto, and that sends them into emotional chaos. The super empath's steadfastness is what the narcissist cannot bear. They can't manipulate someone who's no longer playing. They can't control someone who no longer fears the consequences. Every time the narcissist tries to pull the super empath back, with rage, guilt-tripping, or playing the victim, they only reinforce the truth. They've lost control. And this is when the real collapse begins. The narcissist doesn't fall apart because they were attacked. They fall apart because they were abandoned with themselves. And it's that emptiness that terrifies them more than anything else. The narcissist built their entire world around the belief that they could control others, especially the super empath. But when the super empath says no and walks away, that entire world comes crashing down. There's no one left to reflect their ego, no one left to affirm their importance, no one left to blame when things fall apart. This isn't just the loss of a relationship, this is the loss of an entire system they relied on to survive. Now, let's turn our attention to the super empath, because this is where the story truly becomes powerful and inspiring. When they decide to push back, they don't just escape the narcissist, they reclaim themselves. This isn't a small act or mere survival. This is a complete rebirth, a process through which the super empath not only overcomes pain, but becomes stronger, more confident, and deeply aware of their own worth. Let's dive into this journey because this is the part where the true power of the super empath begins to shine. The resistance of the super empath isn't just about walking away or cutting off a relationship. It's a fundamental shift in how they see themselves and how they engage with the world. It begins with setting boundaries, not to punish the narcissist, but to protect themselves. They say no to abuse, to manipulation, to being treated as an object rather than a human being. This is a conscious decision, rooted in a deep understanding that they deserve respect, that they are not responsible for someone else's happiness, especially not a narcissist who never truly valued them. A super empath has the ability to turn suffering into strength. They don't let pain define them or drag them down. Instead, they use it as a tool for growth. With every wound, every time they are used or betrayed, the super empath learns something about themselves and others. They learn to recognize the signs of manipulation, the small lies, the broken promises, the unfair blame. They learn to set boundaries, not through arguments, but through steadfast action. And most importantly, they learn to love themselves, not through others' validation, but through self-awareness. When the super empath refuses to be a narcissist's source of supply, they don't just free themselves, they also break the cycle of abuse that the narcissist might have carried forward to others. This is a powerful act, not only for themselves, but for those around them. They become a living example of what standing up to abuse can look like. They prove that you don't have to scream or hurt others to be strong. You just have to choose yourself. And this doesn't just change their life, it can inspire others to do the same. This rebirth doesn't happen overnight. It is a long and sometimes painful process. The super empath must face the pain they've endured, the moments they were hurt, used, and when they put others' needs above their own. They have to admit that they gave too much, stayed too long, and sacrificed their self-respect for a hopeless belief that the narcissist would change. This isn't easy. It takes honesty, the courage to look back, and the patience to heal. And what does healing look like? It begins with forgiveness, not for the narcissist, but for themselves. The super empath must forgive themselves for staying, for believing they could change someone, for not setting boundaries sooner. This is a vital step because without forgiveness they could remain trapped in self-blame, which only prolongs the pain the narcissist caused. But once they forgive themselves, they open the door to growth. They begin rebuilding their self-worth, not from others' approval, but from the deep knowledge that they matter. Let's go deeper. When the super empath heals, they don't just become stronger, they become untouchable in the ways the narcissist once used to harm them. They learn to spot the signs of abuse early on, the sweet words hiding bad intentions, the promises without follow-through, the actions that don't match the words. They learn to set boundaries immediately, not with anger, but with confidence. They build a life rooted in self-respect, in healthy relationships, and in the understanding that they don't need to sacrifice themselves in order to be loved. And here's the most beautiful part. This rebirth isn't just a personal victory, it's a declaration. When a super empath rises and chooses themselves, they send a powerful message to the narcissist. I am no longer your supply. I am no longer someone you can use. I am me, and I deserve respect. This is the unmatched power of the super empath. The power not just to survive, but to shine, to become the best version of themselves. If you suspect that you are a super empath, listen to this. You have this power inside you, even if you haven't fully realized it yet. And here's how you can begin to tap into it. Step 1 is awareness. See the truth about what you've been through. The times you were hurt, the times you put others above yourself. Be honest with yourself about the boundaries you need to set. Step 2 is action. Start saying no, not with rage, but with firmness. Walk away from situations that don't respect you, no matter how hard it is. Step 3 is growth. Focus on living authentically, building a life that reflects your values, not someone else's expectations. While the super empath is being reborn and moving forward, let's turn back to the narcissist, because their story doesn't end when the super empath walks away. In fact, that's when they're forced to confront a reality they've spent their entire life avoiding, the emptiness inside themselves. When the super empath pulls away, the narcissist doesn't just lose a person in their life, they lose a vital source of narcissistic supply, someone who once provided the attention, validation, and support they relied on to feel important. Let's break this down even further, because this is where we begin to see the stark difference between the two and why the narcissist cannot tolerate this loss. The narcissist's first reaction after being left is often to seek a new source of supply. They don't want to face the emptiness. They want to fill it as quickly as possible. They might rush into another relationship, searching for someone else to manipulate and lean on. They do this from a place of desperation because they can't stand the feeling of being alone with themselves. They might try to recreate the relationship they had with the super empath, looking for someone new to provide attention, to validate them, to make them feel significant again. But here's the problem. No one can replace the depth the super empath once brought. The super empath didn't just offer attention, they understood the narcissist in ways the narcissist couldn't even understand themselves. They saw the pain, the insecurity, the fragility that was hidden beneath the narcissist's mask of confidence. They gave not only validation but deep emotional insight, something the narcissist craved but never knew how to reciprocate. When the super empath disappears, the narcissist doesn't just lose a supply, they lose a part of themselves they never built on their own, and this sends them into a spiral of insecurity and desperation. Narcissists often lack the ability for true self-reflection. They cannot look inward and assess themselves honestly. They build their ego on what others think of them, on the reflections they receive from outside. When the super empath leaves, that mirror is gone. There's no one left to tell them they're amazing, that they matter, that they're right, and that sends them into a panic, because they don't know how to define themselves without outside reinforcement. In some cases, the narcissist may become angry when faced with this loss. They might lash out at the super empath, sending angry messages, trying to reconnect just to blame or threaten. They might take out their frustration on those around them, becoming irritable and more aggressive than usual. And sometimes they may even turn their anger inward, feeling a flicker of regret or self-hatred. But here's the truth. Those moments of self-reflection rarely last. Why? Because in order to truly change, a narcissist must face the truth about their behavior. They have to admit they manipulated, exploited, and hurt others. And that's something most narcissists are simply not willing to do. Instead, they keep running. They keep searching for someone new to fill the void. A new friend, a new lover, a new co-worker to manipulate. But without the super empath, they are never truly satisfied. They might get attention from new sources, but it lacks depth. It lacks the understanding the super empath once gave. And so they enter a never-ending cycle. They seek, they take, they use, but they're never full because they don't know how to face themselves. Now compare this to the super empath and the contrast becomes crystal clear. While the super empath is healing, growing, and building a life rooted in self-respect and honesty, the narcissist is stuck in an inescapable loop. The super empath chooses light. They choose truth, no matter how painful, and that's what allows them to move forward. The narcissist chooses darkness. They choose illusion because that's where they feel safest, and that keeps them trapped. This is the greatest difference between the two. One learns from pain and becomes stronger, while the other runs from pain and remains weak. The narcissist doesn't fall apart because they were attacked. They fall apart because they're left alone with themselves. The super empath doesn't need to do anything dramatic. They simply walk away. And their absence is powerful enough to shake the narcissist's entire world. This is the power of choosing yourself, a power the narcissist will never understand, because they never dare to face the truth. And this brings us to a bigger question. Can a narcissist change? Some believe they can, that if they face a big enough loss, they might begin to look inward. But the reality is, that kind of change is rare. To change, a narcissist would have to give up the illusion they've built. The illusion that they're always right, that they don't need anyone, that they can control everything. And that is a step most narcissists are simply not willing to take. Instead, they continue to live in nothingness, a hollow life where they're never truly satisfied, never truly happy, and never truly know who they are. We've taken a journey, one that explored why the narcissist simply cannot handle it when a super empath pushes back. We began by understanding the two main characters, the super empath with their deep patience and inner strength, and the narcissist with their false ego and dependence on others. We witnessed how the super empath endures, how they accumulate pain and insight, and how they channel their anger into purposeful strength. We saw their rebirth, how they reclaimed themselves, rebuilt their self-worth, and became the strongest version of who they are meant to be. And we observed the narcissist's collapse, their panic, their escapism, and their entrapment in a hollow existence when they no longer have someone to reflect their false identity. This isn't just a story about escaping emotional abuse. This is a story about power, about freedom, about choosing yourself over living to please someone else. The super empath doesn't just survive, they win. They prove that compassion is not weakness, that patience is not submission, that anger can be a tool for positive transformation. They are the light for anyone who has ever felt trapped, used, or diminished, and that is why this story matters. If you are a super empath, or if you suspect that this power lives inside you, then this message is for you. You are not weak because you are sensitive. You are not a victim because you've endured. You are strong because you chose to rise, because you chose to set boundaries, because you dared to choose yourself. Your intuition, your ability to see through others, is a gift. Your compassion, your ability to care deeply, is a strength. Your willpower, your ability to say no and stand your ground, is what makes you extraordinary. Use these gifts to build a life you deserve, a life free from manipulation or abuse, a life where you are respected, loved, and valued for who you truly are. And here's what I want you to do right now. Hit that subscribe button to continue exploring the power within you. We'll walk this journey together through more videos, more stories, more lessons. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear this. Friends, family, co-workers, anyone who might need a spark of hope, a reminder that they are not alone. You could be the reason someone finds the strength to change their life with just one small act of kindness. And finally, leave your thoughts in the comments. Have you found your superpower yet? What helped you rise and say, enough is enough? What makes it hard for you to choose yourself? I'll be reading every single response, not just because I'm curious, but because your story matters. It matters to me, to the people watching this video, and to anyone out there searching for the strength to step out of the darkness. Thank you for spending this time here. Be strong, be confident, and always, always choose yourself.